Republican from Ohio, Congressman Mike Turner. Congressman, I really appreciate your time here and also your expertise in this space based on your role on the House Intelligence Committee for so many years. Just to start, what is your sense of this reporting, of what CNN has in the DIA analysis?
Okay. Well, first, let's understand that the reporting is about a leaked report. So we don't have the report. We don't know what the report itself actually says. But then let's go to the next step, is that we have this headline that CNN is reporting where the headline says, U.S. bombs did not destroy Iran's nuclear sites, early intel suggests. What's troubling about that headline, and Phil, let's try to get us all back on track here, is that headline is not fake news, but it's not news, because the administration did not say that the bombs destroyed Iran's nuclear sites. I have in front of me the president's statement, and the president said that they had carried out massive precision strikes on 3 key nuclear facilities. And at that nuclear facilities, the objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity at those facilities. He then went on to say that Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities at those sites were completely and totally obliterated. He didn't say the sites were completely obliterated. The sites actually are massive and are huge, and facility are huge. So Iran's nuclear sites, as CNN's headline says, were not destroyed or completely obliterated. No one is saying that. So it's not that it's fake news. It's just not news. The problem is a bunker buster, which is 30,000 pounds, does obliterate its target. Now, we all know that these bombs hit their target. They hit the enrichment facilities. Enrichment facilities, nuclear facilities, are very fragile. They're very specific, and it obliterated those facilities that they targeted. No one is arguing that they didn't hit the targets they intended. No one argued that they didn't, that the United States didn't know the targets that they were hitting. And no one's arguing that they didn't have the desired effect on those targets.
I think the reporting in the actual story itself, based on what my colleagues received, was that the scale of the effect on the intended targets here, not the entire nuclear facility.
Well, actually, that's not true. CNN is actually reporting the sites itself. Now, the Washington Post is correctly reporting, and this is what the IAEA is reporting, the International Atomic Energy Agency is reporting, and this is really where the discussion here needs to be, then the CNN needs to be its discussion on, is that Iran's program and its nuclear sites are much greater.
Sure.
Washington Post is reporting there are actually 30 sites that aren't just the 3 that we attacked. There aren't just the 3 enrichment facilities that we had precision attacks on. And as the Washington Post is reporting, using the same information that CNN has been all day trying to discredit President Trump for, which, by the way, President Trump did not say the nuclear sites were destroyed.
Respectfully,
I have his statement in front of me.
I understand that. I think
and you can play it. You can play his statement.
I'm not questioning
and
what
put it
he
against your headline. And he didn't say that.
What I'm saying is there is a difference between how the chairman of the Joint Chiefs described the operation and how it was described by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and President Trump. My point here, and
President Trump's statement is key, not meaning all. Not key, not meaning all. Nuclear enrichment facilities, not as you're saying nuclear sites, have been completely and totally obliterated. But the key where we need to be today, which is what then President Trump went on to say, which is what CNN should be reporting about, is Iran remains a threat, even with the attack that occurred today. And President Trump, by the way, this is not like he just became president. He was president in his first term. This is a continuation of his policies before. Iran remains a threat. Diplomacy is going to have to occur. Their nuclear sites are vast beyond just these. Their nuclear capabilities, their program is beyond just these sites. Their threat is beyond.
Those caveats have been made clear by the president.
Yes, absolutely. He says right here, tonight I can report to the world to the world that strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace.
Their key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated.
By these, that is exactly, he says right here, our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity at these facilities. At these facilities, I believe where these bombs hit, and exploded, that they were obliterated. And as the Washington Post is reporting, these were not their total and only facilities.
Can I ask you a question? Because I feel like we're wandering into, and I think we've known each other for many years. The extent of this operation, your understanding of it beforehand, because this is something that's been in the U.S. government and tabletopped and planned for many, many years before the president decided to hit the green light.
Right. I have for 2 decades been involved.
Was there ever any expectation that it would obliterate the nuclear enrichment program, that it would devastate or destroy all of the capability that Iran has?
I do not believe that President Donald Trump has ever said that if you hit these 3 enrichment facilities that you would eliminate. I'm saying, I'm answering your question, that you would eliminate the ability for Iran to be a threat and with its nuclear program, that it would still take diplomacy, which is what he calls for. And he says, if not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier. I think he has foreshadowed and he has said they need to come to the table. The fact that you're reporting as if like it's some surprise that we need to continue.
But that's why I'm asking for clarity in terms of understanding going into this, expectations coming out of it.
This is not a failure of these attacks.
I'm not.
It's not a failure.
Quite literally have never said it's a failure, and I don't think the story reflects.
This is the recognition of the fact that you can hit these 3 sites and be incredibly successful, which this was, and Iran will remain a threat, and we are going to have to continue both diplomacy and action with respect to Iran to continue to address the threat.
There has been a framing by the president, which I think is what we're getting stuck here. Beyond the initial statement.
I think CNN
which is that this is
over. CNN is stuck because I think CNN wants to make this a Donald Trump issue instead of Iran.
The reason why I wanted to talk to you about this is because you were in the Gang of 8. You were a chair of the House Intelligence Committee. You can explain to people what the DIA assessment is, what it isn't, and what you are looking for going forward. Also, what expectations should have been or were on Capitol Hill within folks of your knowledge.
It doesn't matter which president of the United States would have done this, but Donald Trump was the only one who had the willingness to do so. You would have still had the next step, which is the report that we have today, which is Iran remains a threat. And I'm glad that Donald Trump, having had the foresight and the willingness to take this action, understands that more work needs to be done, and that is not a failure of this action.
Why do you think there weren't briefings today? Or Gang of 8 briefings. Like, why haven't lawmakers been read in on what's going on?
I'm not in the administration. I certainly don't know what availability that people had. I have no idea what occurred. But I do know this. This is not a failure of this administration. This is not a failure of what occurred by the people who did this mission. This is a reality of even if this mission is absolutely successful, Iran remains a threat and more work needs to be done.
To your point, and to be very clear, I've never said either of those things.
And you can
certainly have not said
do
anything
all
about those
day
who conducted
saying that this is an issue of Donald Trump and is not an issue of Donald Trump.
In your statement, which I thought was very level-headed, sober, and pointed with a purpose in the wake of the strikes, at the end of it, you had a really important line. You said, we must confirm that there's no hidden legacy elements of the Iranian nuclear program that remain viable that might permit Iranian nuclear ambitions to be achievable.
Right, and I believe the Washington Post article accurately reflects that what we have and what we're facing, which is what I think the administration and Donald Trump recognized both in his statement that night and that he recognizes today, that there is more work that needs to be done.
What does that work entail? Like, is that future U.S. strikes? Is that, what's the process here going forward?
Well, what he foreshadowed that night was that Iran, now having been hit, now having had overwhelming force applied at those sites, needs to come to the table and recognize, as he says, they must now make peace. And I don't mean Obama-style JCPOA where they had a fake, nuclear agreement where they're going to continue to enrich. They must now come to the table and say, we're going to give up our nuclear ambitions and we're going to abandon those nuclear ambitions. If they were to take that step, and that would require, of course, surrendering the ability to enrich. Perhaps we could go the next step. If not, I think that they are, as the president said, if not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier.
Have you seen the battle damage assessment, which I think is up on Capitol Hill right now?
I have not.
Given what you're laying out here, this, I think, intensity of the pushback from the White House about how this is an assessment that they don't agree with, but it's an assessment you're saying is exactly what you expected or what it should have been. We're just
I've not seen it. So again, and what you're reporting on is a leak of it. So even what you're saying, we can't accept that the basis of your report is really what it says. I believe that we have to accept that because these are, as the president has said, precision strikes, and as the the International Atomic Energy has said, and as we all know, there are 30 sites that Iran has. There are additional sites that are going to have other nuclear materials.
Right.
And we don't know what we don't know. We don't know where Iran has moved things. We don't know where they have had perhaps other clandestine operations. We're going to have to find out what other threats and risks there are from Iran.
The president's never mentioned that something could be moved. I think the vice president was talking about enriched uranium over the weekend and the possibility of not knowing exactly where that is going forward. Look, again, I consider you, and you've always been an honest broker with me in our conversations, the idea that the president has not framed this as a significant victory that more or less puts an end to Iran's nuclear program.
I think you're putting words in his mouth. I do not think.
I didn't say I was directly quoting him. I'm saying
exactly,
it's being framed like that.
But all day, that is how CNN has portrayed that, and I do believe that is absolutely not.
Do you think the president
accurate.
right now, if the president were to talk about this, he would acknowledge, look, we have no idea where the enriched uranium is at this point in time. There was no expectation that we were ever going to knock out the entire nuclear program. There's likely still centrifuges
I don't think it's necessary for the president to say what you're saying. I think it is absolutely, the president has taken an incredible act of leadership that no other president has taken. World leaders have seen him take a decisive action that has made the world safe. The head of NATO, other world leaders understand that the action that he has taken was absolutely a step that changes the Middle East, and it changes the dynamics of the world, and it stops a rogue nation from publicly enriching uranium and on its way breathtakingly toward a nuclear weapon that would have changed. I mean, they were developing an ICBM that could hit Washington, D.C. They were developing missile technology that could hit Paris and London. They were a threat to the world. And Donald Trump took action to derail that, that regime. That is incredibly important. There are steps yet to be taken. We'll see where that goes.
We'll see where it goes, Congressman. Appreciate your time.